Well, hello, everyone. The board and the staff of Friends in Solidarity are so pleased to have you here with us today during National Trauma Survivors Week. And we especially welcome all of you who support, nurture, and help heal survivors of trauma, and those of you who are trauma survivors yourself. And I see on this screen that we have people here today from Rome, from Juba, South Sudan, from Canada. So this is truly an international gathering. My name is Sister Mary Beth Ham, and I am chair of the Board of Friends in Solidarity and a member of the Education Committee that is sponsoring this event. As you can see on the slide, we have a diverse representation of women and men's religious congregations on our board, some of whom are with us today. And we have a small but passionate and expert staff under the leadership of Sister Joan Mumaw, President and founder of Friends in Solidarity. During our program today, you will have an opportunity to hear from our friends, Sisters Gabrielle and Scholastica, who minister with trauma survivors in South Sudan. We are very excited that both of those sisters can be with us virtually. There will be an opportunity for questions later in the program, so we encourage you to use the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom screen throughout the program to ask any questions you may have. And finally, by way of logistics, we ask you to keep your mic off during the program. And so I'll give you a moment to turn off your mic right now if you haven't already done that. And now we will hear from Sister Annette St. Amour, a former staff member of the Good Shepherd Peace Center, a member of Friends in Solidarity Education Committee, who will provide some history of trauma healing in South Sudan and her firsthand experience working with trauma survivors. Sister Annette, it's all yours.
I'm happy to share the beginning of how one method of trauma healing began in South Sudan. Recognizing that most people in the country were traumatized by all they had experienced in the years of war, bombings, displacement, forced exile, and much grief, the School Sister of Notre Dame, working with Solidarity, believed that the need for healing from trauma was so tremendous. It was the underlying reality in people's lives. It could not be ignored. In November of 2010, Sister Kathy Arata began that work as the only one initially involved in Solidarity's pastoral ministry in the country. The country which had been ravaged by 21 years of war with the North. Kathy had previously ministered in El Salvador, where she had learned of Capacitar, a method of popular education that empowers a traumatized person to heal through simple practices and body movements taken from Tai Chi, yoga, and other practices. These exercises restore and open the channels of energy in a person's body. And it enables them to cope with the emotions connected with trauma. Capacitar is a Spanish word meaning to empower. The traumatized person learns to access their own innate power of self-healing. Group animators are not therapists nor trauma counselors. They are educators. And through this approach, young and old can help themselves once they learn what the practices are and they continue to do these exercises. This person then can teach and share these practices with others in their families. It helps them individually and eventually their communities because they share it with others. With the help of a medical mission of Mary, Sister Genevieve, a physician trained in Capacitar, Sister Kathy organized Capacitar workshops with the theme, Heal Ourselves, Heal Sudan, and Heal Our World. Sisters Kathy and Genevieve held 5 workshops in 3 weeks, reaching approximately 300 participants in total. At the very first workshop held in Juba, about 130 participants showed up, way beyond expectations. People came from parishes, women's groups, schools, and some medical practices. An additional workshop was held for the staff at the Catholic radio station. The following days were in another area of the country, in the northwest town of Wau. To do these workshops with students and staff at the Catholic University campus and with 2 different nursing schools. Then back to Juba for a workshop with the 25 staff members of Catholic Relief Services who were working in South Sudan. The following year, after South Sudan became an independent country in July 2011, more workshops continued to help people work through their experiences of trauma. From May 2011 to November 2013, about 340 more people participated in workshops, including police, soldiers, prisoners, rural women, leaders, diocesan staffs, parishes, and parishioners and youth. Then in December 2013, a whole new civil war broke out in the new country of South Sudan. A war caused by power struggle and tribal divisions. Violence and trauma ensued and continues even to this present day. Even though a peace agreement has been signed, there's still a number of attacks in different parts of the country. In April 2015, Sister Genevieve came for a program to train trainers, animators of Capacitar. 36 participants learned how to become animators. And at the end of 2 weeks, 12 teams were formed and commissioned to go to their places of ministry and to facilitate workshops. The majority of these participants were religious sisters, priests, with some lay leaders, and they went into the different parts of the country for their Capacitar workshops. From 2016 on, local animators, mostly working with the Solidarity Pastoral teams at first, continued to offer workshops and train leaders. Some of the local leaders are still offering workshops with groups that they connect with, such as the street children, prisoners, teachers, journalists, students. Capacitar practices were used as icebreakers during other meetings and sessions for various gatherings. Teachers are taught as part of their curriculum or in their training to use Capacitar exercises with students in their classes. Healing from trauma is necessary in South Sudan and in our world today, especially we're so aware of Ukraine. Capacitar is a popular education that anyone can learn to do. It is a wellness program. and it is a great blessing used in many countries throughout the world.
Thank you, Annette, for providing us some background on trauma healing in South Sudan. I am your host, Sister Barbara Buckley, and I have had the distinct pleasure of interviewing our three panelists, Mrs. Constance Langoya, Sister Scholastica Nagandi, and Sister Gabrielle Farrell. Constance works with the Solidarity Pastoral Team as a facilitator of trauma healing workshops. Her home is in the capital city of South Sudan, Juba. Sisters Skoll and Gabrielle are members of the Solidarity Pastoral Team. Scholastica is a Sister of Mercy from Kenya and the director of the Good Shepherd Peace Center. Gabrielle is a missionary sister of Our Lady of Apostles from Ireland, who is missioned to South Sudan. We were able to record this interview with our panelists at the Good Shepherd Peace Center in South Sudan. Good Shepherd Peace Center has a new satellite for internet connectivity, which usually works great. But sometimes transmissions from South Sudan are unreliable. Thus, we recorded this session. However, I see that Skoll and Gabrielle and Constance are on the webinar. So if we have time, we may be able to direct questions to them from the audience. I also see that Sister Tarazina Mirandi, a Cabrini sister and a psychologist and a member of the team, is also online with us. So at this point, let us move forward with our interview. So South Sudan experiences a lot of civil unrest and strife. The people that come to you for healing, what kind of trauma have they experienced?
Well, quite a number of the women and men and children that come to the center for healing would have experienced a number of traumas, namely violence at home. You know, there's a lot of gender-based violence, for example, husbands beating their wives, girls being beaten out by their parents, being given to marriage when they are underage. So such would be the women that would come to the center suffering from these traumas. We would also have people, especially men, who go for cattle raiding. You know, we have tribal cattle raiding. One tribe go to another tribe to steal animals, you know, cows, yeah. So some of the people are traumatized because their animals have been taken away from them by another tribe. At the moment, what we are experiencing, especially in Kit, near around the center, is families coming to us crying that animals from another tribe have come to their garden, you know, eaten up their crops, for example, and left them without the vegetables that they had hoped they would have. So these are the kind of traumas that people are carrying. And I invite Gabrielle also to add.
But just obviously the physical trauma as well. We have, you know, people after the war, officially the war is over, but of course we know it's not. And so, I mean, a lot of people are suffering and mentally. A lot of the workshops we would have done, both Skull and I would have done in basic counseling, which is another work of ours. A lot of people, you know, it's so emotionally disturbed, and they have real physical pain as well as mental pain, you know, and there's a lot of women, some men that I have actually spoken to, but mostly women who have been raped throughout the war and now as well. And we're talking about gang rapes, you know, we're not, you know, so you have all kinds. You have the economic trauma as well. People don't have enough food. You have the environment as well. The climate brings its own trauma, you know. Have you anything else to add there, Constance?
COVID also brought trauma of its own, because people were not used to staying at home all the time, the whole family at once. But COVID tended to have the people at home during the quarantine, and then slowly as children went back to school, people went back to work. It kind of made space for people to not be too close to one another. And during this time, there was a lot of disputes because there's no money for food, because most, like in the Juba setting, we all depend on the market. So if there's no money to buy food, there's not enough money to buy enough food for everyone, and everybody's staying at home all the time, there are a lot of squabbles that come up. And amidst those squabbles, domestic violence.
So how do people find the Good Shepherd Peace Pastoral Team? How do they know about you?
We work, as you know, with the Bishops Conference. So we're invited to work around the different dioceses. So we're, so they get to know us that way. But also because of the Good Shepherd Peace Center, that is owned by RASAS, which is the religious association in South Sudan. It's a center for peace and reconciliation. Come to make retreats. Some people come to have workshops. And while some people would come independently to have and bring their own facilitators, but they come to get to know us and they come to get to know who we are. So it's word of mouth a lot.
And also to add the fact that when the trauma work started with Solidarity many years ago, and Annette to bear witness to that with Barbara when they started this work a long time ago. They not only worked in groups in it itself, but they also worked with groups across the whole country. They went to all parts of South Sudan, working with groups and training TOTs in trauma. So as they worked outside Juba, where the Good Shepherd is, of course, they told people where they are based, where KIT is. So that way also people got to know where KIT is, because they also brought groups to the same place. So the center is really known through a long-term work of solidarity in trauma.
How do you build trust with the people so that they can, they can reveal what they've been through?
I think when we all have different experiences, and also, so you'd hear different stories here, but also people are different and how they share their experience. But like we've found that it's very important to have trauma awareness workshops. Not necessarily, we don't necessarily call them trauma healing, but the awareness. And people come when they're invited to a group, and it's a very relaxed atmosphere, obviously, here. So a lot of people just are waiting to talk, to have someone to listen to them. So it's interesting how the trust can be developed quite quickly here. Different cultures, and people love giving each other support as well, and it helps them through their own stories.
Well, a safe space is created during the workshops, whether it's awareness or the workshops, training of trainers, any other healing, promotion of wellness. A safe space is created by the activities we normally carry out. So as we begin, we respectfully encourage everybody to feel at home. And as we begin the exercises, there is a sense of, we try not to judge anyone. We try not to force anybody, but we just try to encourage them as they are ready and as they are willing to share what they have to share when the time comes. But as activities take place, a sense of trust is normally developed amongst the participants and the facilitators. We can begin with maybe us just asking everybody, apart from having the name tags, registration done and so on, we just ask everybody to walk around the room, meet with somebody, introduce themselves to them, and say 1, 2 things about themselves. And then we get the other person to introduce the person they have talked with. As the introductions that are done, they are done respectfully, and we try to be attentive. Not only listening with our ears, but with our eyes and our mouths respectfully.
Mhm.
So we hope that by the time we introduce ourselves and begin, there is a kind of safe space created within us. First day, we don't do anything with talking, and probably the second, maybe the third day is when people have gotten used to one another. And if they're ready and willing, if they're not, we don't push.
Okay. So the experiential workshop that you're running is Capacitar? Is that right?
Yes.
And how does that work?
We begin with introducing ourselves and beginning to get to know what we feel. How do we feel inside us as we come? How are we feeling? Then after that, we try to relax using different exercises, because there are a number of exercises.
Like yoga and other
Yeah.
things?
Okay, the first one normally is breathing, because breath is life's force. So we like to take us through what good breathing is like. Try to support and encourage one another to try and breathe deep. Because when we experience trauma, sometimes the breathing is shallow and fast and shallow, not deep. So we just try to have the experience of breathing in quite deep. We take a while to get it really go down. And then we breathe in through the nose, then we breathe out through the mouth slowly. We take it slow. Try to relax. Then we start with exercises like tapping, to wake up the brain.
Explain tapping.
So it's just our bodies are accustomed to those things that we are used to doing. But we go back to basic, like childlike exercises, if you call it that. We just try to awaken our brains and awaken our body. So we tap our head all over, just to try to relax. Then, after tapping the head, face, tap arms, right? Then our legs down to our feet, just to open ourselves. Do that to, first of all, relax ourselves, our emotions, our spirits, and kind of cool down. Getting ourselves ready to be able to be open, be receptive.
I must say, in the team we are divided. We've given ourselves briefs. Okay, we have 5 members in the team of Solidarity working in the center. So I personally am not involved very much with trauma work. Sister Gabriel is involved in trauma work. So what I have found, how I have experienced the trainers, is that it is a group that is grounded. They know the method. I personally don't know the method, although I attended a few seminars when I was in the UK, but I can't say that I know it. But how I have experienced them, it's a group that is well-grounded, a group that is always out to receive. They are ready to receive more knowledge. So I think there is room for more improvement on this group. There are very many, and we appreciate Barbara and Annette for having trained them. I would say they know their stuff. So well done to Gabriel, who is taken over from Annette and Barbara. So I think we have a good group, but there's need for more training.
What are some of the comments that people make after they've been through the workshop?
they're diverse. The women have been helped and they keep coming back for help when they can. And the youth are so eager to learn more and more and more. They feel we're not giving them enough. So I think they appreciate it, and it has helped a lot of them. This morning I was talking to one of the people we trained in 2020. He was about to commit suicide. He felt he was useless, but we managed to get him onto the team. He moved with us for 2 years and he's now in Ethiopia. And in Mazzarello, women have embraced it so completely that they're helping change other women in the center. And they have a session every week where they come together and remind themselves, help themselves. And we were also trained in the basic counseling. So that has helped them from capacity to also the basic counseling skills. So I think it's doing a lot of good.
I'm sure that, trauma is a lifelong, getting over healing from trauma is a lifelong process. The one doesn't forget it or get over it easily. But how long would you say you really have to work with somebody to get them to a point where they are at least comfortable in their life?
That depends on what kind of trauma and how ready he feels she is or he is. It takes time. For some people it takes years.
I was intrigued that in the beginning, Scola mentioned that domestic violence was one of the kind of primary forms of trauma that women have experienced there. I'm just wondering, in terms of their situation and bride wealth, what are the chances of them not returning into that situation of domestic violence?
You see, we are caught. It is a vicious circle. You empower the woman to cope with the situation because she will not leave the husband who is beating her. She can't leave. She doesn't have a choice. She's caught. So what are the chances that this woman will ever stop being beaten? The only option would be if you get a chance of bringing the men and to empower them, bringing the children and to empower them, bringing the whole clan and to empower them. So it is a situation that is really, you cannot think of healing one segment of a whole. It's a whole holistic approach that is needed here. But at least you can start somewhere. You empower the woman. Right? She knows what are rights. Although she won't be given those rights. She knows her strength. At least that awareness. We don't know. That is much we can do. But we are looking forward to a time when this society of ours, South Sudan, will be so enlightened, will be so awakened, will be so empowered that the whole people, children, families, government, school, NGOs, everybody sings the same song. Human dignity is worthy of respect. We are not there yet, but we have hope.
Could you give us a sense of approximately how many people have gone through your programs there at the Peace Center?
The Peace Center is just a building there, where it's an organic thing. It's just where we're called, we go. And it's very important to remember that, Solidarity work with the Bishops' Conference. Okay, so we work with the bishops to help empower and build capacity for people. So we move out. There's a distinction between the center and the pastoral team, even though we're the same people, So I'd say it'd be impossible to name even how many. But let's say, since in my time anyway, we take workout groups of no more than 30 at a time, and it's not all capacity. obviously. We do different stuff. We're trying to build it up.
And I want to emphasize the fact that most of the work that we support, trauma healing, conflict resolution and all that, it's the pastoral team that funds this. You are the people that fund these programs. We want to say very, very big thank you to you, John Muma, with all the Friends of Solidarity in the US. Any of that work is funded by the funds that you give us. The Peace Center is very, very busy. It can be booked out throughout the year. But we have become very smart. We had to learn. We have become very smart to sneak in the pastoral program like trauma healing, because those are our programs that you fund, and we are grateful. We like the Good Shepherd Peace Center because it's conducive for training. It's actually perfect. It's an ideal. When the groups do their trauma work there, it's perfect. But that doesn't mean that we don't go to the dioceses. The center is a national center used by all groups, Muslims, Catholics, name it. So we also want to respect that.
What about other places in Juba? Do you ever go to the UN camp or to parishes or groups? Do they invite you to come to their places and work with a particular group at times? Or are you right now doing everything at the center?
But like capacitar is one method, you know, but we have other methods of working with trauma, okay? So Constance spoke about, you know, what she does with the capacitar, you know, but we do go to other places and we offer different types of workshops, okay? Like, I mean, in a couple of weeks' time, no, it's about in 2 months' time, I've a workshop 52 priests down in Yambio. There's 5 workshops that I'm doing in Rumbe with the priests there, the religious, with the laity, with the youth, with the women. And it won't be all capacitar, I can assure you. It's very, very different. It doesn't mean that I don't use some of the practices of capacitar. I very much believe in it, you know. But so like it's not, you know, so we're going there. We have an awful lot of stuff going on this year with the different dioceses, and we're actually very, very proud that we have so many bishops asking us to do the different workshops on trauma awareness and in trauma healing, you know. So we are moving around a lot in it, yeah. We're short numbers too, and it's beautiful to know that some of the people in the diocese there that have been trained a little bit in therapy, you know, kind of counseling, they're going to join the teams in the different ones, because that's what's important.
Do you have any final comments? Constance, do you have a final word for us?
Appreciation for the support, you know, to be able to empower people, and they also in turn empower others and help others in the communities. Something. Last year we did something with the blind, and this year we'll do some with we're going to do some with the deaf and dumb.
Skoll, do you have any final words?
Gratitude. Thank you very much. I think I have loved this, and I hope what we've shared here will be of benefit to a bigger audience, just for people to get to know what is happening in South Sudan, and especially those of our partners and collaborators. And
yes, I just want to say that you may be very grateful for how we have supported you with our donors. But I think the donors will be very happy to know how well all of their contributions are being used. This is a very heartening experience to listen to you, to hear what you're doing. God bless.
thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, for the interview, and Skola and Gabrielle and Constance for your input into this seminar and webinar. And this is a period where people will have an opportunity to address questions directly to you. if anybody has a question, they can just type into the chat, hi, if you want to ask the question yourself, or if you want to type the question into the chat and I'll ask it on your behalf. Or if you use the reaction button at the bottom of the screen and look for the raised hand, then I'll recognize you and you can unmic yourself and ask your own question. But just while you're looking for those things, I'd like to ask Annette, in your presentation, you did talk about dealing with soldiers. I wonder if you could say something a little bit more about the work with those people who have been fighting and in this constant kind of situation of war, what you found with them. Thank you. You have to unmute yourself, Annette.
Excuse me. Thank you. I'll begin with my own experience of working with the soldiers in our center there at Kiev. We invited the soldiers who were guarding the center, the soldiers and the police, but especially the soldiers. And from their base, we went to their commanders and asked if they could come be relieved for 3 days, I think we did 3 or 5 days of workshops. By the second night, the commanders on the base said it was such positive reviews that the commanders wanted to come. And so some of them came and sent other soldiers out to their duties. But it's the people you work with, and there are many soldiers around. And also especially initially, the very first session that was done with that Kathy Arata had organized in WOW, one of the women there who was the Peace and Justice Coordinator for the diocese had done work in the prisons and with prisoners, men and women, and they went into the prison for some of those very first workshops and worked with the prisoners, worked with the guards of the prisoners, and worked with soldiers because they also worked at the base there in WOW. So it depends who you work with, and there was not a group who was invited to participate who was not interested, because I think everybody sensed their need for healing, and especially just basic things. That the comments on the first day was they were able to sleep, something they hadn't been able to do in months, to get a good night's sleep. So just small techniques that we learn in that, and for them that are very practical for their lives and what they need. So that's how the soldiers and prisoners and all different groups. So it's open to children, adults, youth. I haven't found anybody who doesn't respond that we ever worked with. I mean, maybe an individual or so, or different levels of responding, but everybody was welcoming of the experiences.
Thank you, Annette. Maybe Scola and Constance and Gabrielle, another question that I had was just in terms of all of us in our normal lives, maybe have trouble recognizing the need for trauma healing in our lives. I'm just wondering though, if there are specific kind of cultural resistances that exist in South Sudan for people to recognize the need for healing in trauma. I don't know if that question was clear or not. But.
For the women, it's not so difficult because when they normally respond readily. But for the men, there's a tendency of wanting to be, when you are a man, you're not supposed to show any kind of weakness. So even when a man is going through some really dramatic situation, like soldiers, sometimes after the war, they have PTSD, but what can they do? They don't want to come out and say that they're having problems. And unless they confide in somebody who is within their community, and this is when they are in church, when they are actively going to church, they can talk to the priest, and the priest organizes calls and, organizes a training and then calls others who may have, because one person may come out, but then as the organization for a workshop or a meeting is taking place, you find more people coming on board because different people are experiencing similar situations, especially in the communities we are in. For example, people working in government are being paid after 6-7 months, and they're paid 1 month or 2 months. They have a family to look after, children to send to school. The food is that our garden is the market. So if you don't have the money, there is no food. And when there is no food, everybody's complaining at home. The wife, you call her nagging, but she's only asking because she needs to ask. And you can't provide it as a man because you haven't been paid. There's nowhere you're going to look for that money from. So you just have to work it out together. So unless there is a way that they can sit and talk about it, understand one another, so that if the lady can find a way of one of the income generating activities that is popular here is making tea along the roads. So the lady will find a stove, get some charcoal, get a kettle, utensils, cups, and begin making tea at the roadside. At the end of the day, she has enough, maybe not enough, but at least something to provide a meal. So the constructs for men, don't let them come out easily. But for women, it's not so difficult. Now for the children, if the children attend church, it's easy because they always have somebody they can confide in. If it's not the priests, there's a sister, there is somebody at the church who they can say something to, and that person will definitely identify and try to do something about it. So the constructs normally are the normal societal constructs, gender constructs.
Okay, thank you. As we have a couple of people that want to ask questions. So Barbara and Teresina are both want to get in. Scola, go ahead if you wanted to finish there.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Constanza said. We are living in a patriarchal society in South Sudan, where the man's voice counts. So although the woman or the child may recognize the need for healing, there is always, what does daddy say? What does my husband say? Will my husband give me permission to attend that trauma healing workshop? Will my dad allow me to attend that workshop? So we are living in a society that is so, it's the man's voice. So the human rights, where the woman knows I have need to go for healing, the child knows in the school, the teacher is teaching us how to tap and do all that kind of exercises. I can come home and start even teaching my dad or the family how to tap. The child is still scared. How will daddy take this tapping? So that there is that fear that the final word comes from dad, comes from the head of the family. So that is one major cultural constraint.
Thank you. Barbara, Sister Barbara.
Okay, I would certainly like to thank everyone. It's certainly inspiring for me to hear all you're doing and continuing so well what Kathy and Genevieve Van Wansgerber started. I'd like to underline what you said asked about gaining trust, because this particular method, Capacitar, can support talk therapy and is actually being promoted by major psychologists that I've had chances to study in South Sudan, but since then, that they're really emphasizing the essential basis of body work when you do talk therapy, other modes of therapy. So major psychologists like Bessel van der Kolk and Thomas Hübel and Peter Levine and Ruth Janius, et cetera, they're saying the body keeps the score. The body tells the truth. So when we start with the physical, how many experience headaches, stomach aches, maybe get malaria even every year, and they laugh, they say not every year, every month. And then, so we say, well, just hold it. And then we do these exercises, gentle flowing exercises, breathing, but tapping to wake up the body to heal. So if I can add, just in explaining why that works later on, most people don't even have to tell their stories. Of course, there are a lot who need much more professional depth, but when you wake up the body to heal, then, because it's pumping out adrenaline, cortisol, the whole body damaging it, and the emotional brain saying danger, and the thinking brain shuts down. So by doing this, they actually come to more healing and easing their pain. And in North America and Europe, we're seeing polarization, and we're seeing this widespread inability to think. And there's not the openness that there was in South Sudan. It's desperately needed. But the openness in South Sudan was amazing. And the women, Constance is great at this with Kathy Start, but expanding the groups where the women formed women's groups and got their economic projects so that they became more independent. So I just want to applaud what you're doing in all those lines as well.
Thank you, Barbara, for your thoughts and for all the efforts that you have given to South Sudan also, and to Friends in Solidarity.
Thank you.
Sister Teresina?
Yes. I would like to share that the trauma is not just seen with all of the good, wonderful workshops and groups, and even when I've been part of them. My work is mostly in the spiritual area with spiritual direction, giving directed retreats, and also groups that have come that have wanted to have a sense of accompaniment. The group that last year were part of the ambush where the two sisters were killed on August 16th. The rest of the members who were in that bus came for a week. And it was truly, yes, a real sense of giving each one the space of sharing what had happened and their vision of it. And so it gave the whole group who were part of this same bus where the two sisters were killed, they got the message of everyone who had participated, and all of them had different expressions of what went on during that time. Because when they were on the road back from Numale, the driver saw something in front happening. And so he stopped beforehand and he told the men, there were three men, a brother, the driver himself, and there were three men besides the driver. And one was a brother, the other were laymen. And the brother, the driver had told them, you men get out because they will shoot the men. They'll leave the sisters free. but it was just the opposite. The sisters were really targeted. Because, as you all know, the land that was being again invited to come back into, that the Archbishop and the President were there, inviting them to come back. And if the sisters would go back to their land of foundation, which their buildings, everything had been destroyed. If the sisters would go back, the people would come back. There were 600 refugees from northern Uganda who had come on pilgrimage for this celebration on August 15th. And they were being invited to come back. But it goes back to the problem of the cattle raiders. They had taken over that land, and in no way did they want the sisters coming back or the refugees coming back. So when these 8 others who were not killed were there for this week, 10 days, it was like a group therapy, but it was a group therapy of sharing what each one had experienced. So there is so much good, and I saw it in the couple times I was with Constance and we were with the groups coming from the IDP camps, how good the exercises are. They are a real platform, a springboard to help people be more relaxed, to allow what needs to come out. Because people need that sense of healing, which comes on the human, and it does go definitely into the spiritual. We have a group of formators and rectors of seminaries who are working now in what we call a formators forum. And we have been having non-consecutive weeks of formation. And again, it's like a group therapy whereby people become able to share, to accompany, and to give support. So I'm very, very grateful again for all the help that Solidarity, the Friends of Solidarity offer us to offer much here at Good Shepherd Peace Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresina. And I wasn't interrupting you, but you did mention about going into the spiritual. And I thought, just in response to what you've shared with us, if we could take a moment of silence and each one of us in our own way recall the people who have given their lives and the people who have lost their lives in South Sudan. I want to thank everybody for their participation in this, and I would now like to turn it over to Sister Joan Huma, the President of Friends in Solidarity, who will close our webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I want to thank all of those who have collaborated across the globe to make this webinar happen. The Solidarity staff at the Good Shepherd Peace Center near Juba, Sister Scholastica, Sister Gabriela, Constance Langoya, Sister Teresita Morandi, and Sister Barbara Polichny, who actually is in Canada, but has been at Solidarity in South Sudan for many, many years. Secondly, I want to thank the Education Committee who were inspired to design this webinar and facilitated it. Father John Civilon, Sister Mary Beth Ham, Sister Annette Sainamore, Father Tom Tiscornia, Sister Eucharia Madueke. And thirdly, Sister Barbara Buckley, our Associate Administrator, and Susan Oxley, our Communications Coordinator and Social Media Specialist, who recorded, edited, and finalized the webinar. Without Susan and Barbara, this would not have happened. So we're grateful to all who have prepared the webinar and all of you, our participants and supporters, for joining us and supporting this important ministry. To our donors, I think you see how your contributions are being used and how those contributions are benefiting the people of South Sudan, many of whom are victims of war, ethnic conflict, and domestic abuse. We hope you will continue to support the work of Solidarity through your prayers and your contributions to Friends in Solidarity. We are the U.S. partner to Solidarity with South Sudan. So let us now close the webinar with a prayer of peace, for peace, from Pope Francis. He will be visiting South Sudan from July 5th to the 7th, along with the Archbishop of Canterbury and the head of the Presbyterian Church from Scotland. So stay tuned. As we take just a moment of silence, we recognize that prayer may be the most effective intervention we can make. And we include all those areas of conflict in our world today, including Ukraine, as we pray especially for peace in South Sudan. You could pray along silently. It's a little difficult to try and coordinate the peace together. God of peace, hear our prayer. We have tried so many times and over so many years to resolve our conflicts by our own powers and by the force of arms. How many moments of hostility and darkness have we experienced? How much blood has been shed? How many lives have been shattered? How many hopes have been buried? But our efforts have been in vain. Now, God, come to our aid. Grant us peace. Teach us peace. Guide our steps in the way of peace. Open our eyes and our hearts and give us the courage to say, never again war. Instill in our hearts the courage to take concrete steps to achieve peace. Give us the strength daily to be instruments of peace. Enable us to see everyone who crosses our path as a sister or a brother. Make us sensitive to the plea of the people who entreat us, to turn our weapons of war into implements of peace, our fear into confident trust, and our quarreling into forgiveness. Keep alive within us the flame of hope, so that with patience and perseverance, we may opt for dialogue and reconciliation. In this way, may peace triumph at last, and may the words division, hatred, and war be banished from the heart of every man and woman. O God, renew our hearts and minds so that the words which always bring us together will be brother, sister, neighbor, and our way of life will be always that of shalom, peace, salam. Amen. Thank you all for joining us.